everyone's computer. What else? Zoom. I think that's all Zoom.
Oh, cool.
Oh wait. Oh, more things. So yeah, you can do applause and questions in the chat. We're gonna have 4 performances, and then we're gonna have some Q&A time at the end. So if you have questions, put them in the chat, and I'll try to curate that throughout the evening. And if you want to bring more air into this as we have video, if you want to like make hand gestures or like grab Post-its and write little hearts or likes or emojis and like hold them up to the screen, that is welcome. So yeah, that's all the logistical stuff, and I'm gonna turn it back to Albert for an intro.
All right, everyone. Welcome to our online zine reading and release party. We're really excited to do this again. We actually did our first version of this a couple weeks back when Christina and I first prepared our new zines. Christina put out a collection of comics, and I did a zine that I'll be reading from today as well. And we just wanted to bring people together to kind of share in the performance of it. And we had like 20 people in this room that's behind us right now watching us perform. And we also had a musical performance by one of the viewers who's in here right now, one of our local friends. Yes. And we had a lot of fun, and we wanted to share it with everyone else.
And I woke up the next morning, wanted to share it with you.
Yeah, we wanted to create an opportunity for everyone else, all of our friends and everyone in our community who couldn't be here in our living room, our dining room, to do this experience again. So we are in Corvallis, Oregon now, if you didn't know. We are at a house that we have named Mount Caz. Let's see. Was I gonna write more here? What was this about? Oh, I see. Thanks for coming out to hang out with us today at this party. We're gonna be doing what are you pointing at? Oh, sure. Okay, so we're gonna be doing readings from my new zine, from Christina's new comic zines, and a couple other pieces that she has prepared. We're also going to have special guests. Jessie Alsop from Wellington, New Zealand is going to be doing some music and doing some readings. And also Donna Chan from San Francisco is going to be doing 2 spoken word pieces. So I'm really excited to hear some of their new work. Here in Mount Caz, we are many things. Mount Caz is a community renegade art space built on a principle that we have abundant resources when we share those intangible parts of ourselves, like our creativity, our space, and our energy. We wish it to be a free venue, a co-working studio, a potluck restaurant, an artist's third space, a subversive classroom, a weird library, a home for artists, and more. Some of these things we have already been doing, and some of these things it becomes whenever you are sharing our space with us. So thanks for being here. And most importantly, think about how your living room, all the space that you have, all the space that you have, that you could borrow from your company, from your community spaces, how you could turn spaces that you have access to into places that other people can access and do events out of as well. And then invite us to your next weird event. With that, I'm gonna give it back to Christina to do our opening ritual and start us off. Hold on a second, Christina.
Okay, so this is a big experiment, but I want us all to hear each other before I mute everyone again. So we're gonna take some breaths together. So actually, let's just do that first. Let's take 3 breaths together. 1 for being here now. 1 for being here together. And 1 for connecting across the globe around art. And now I'm going to unmute everyone, and on the count of 3, after you see my little host has unmuted you sign, we're gonna yell art as loud as we can all across the globe, okay? You don't have speakers, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Go for it.
1, 2, 3. Yay! Okay. We borrowed that from Min Yoon, who was our accidental first artist in residence here at Mount Caz. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to, I'm going to bring on Jessie. I'm going to unmute Jessie, who's all the way in New Zealand. Hi. Jessie Alsop is a writer, musician, and performer. Fundamentally, she's a storyteller. She's currently working on an EP of moody folk pop and an online personal history museum that explores the stories and personal narratives that are held in old belongings and photographs. I'll let her tell you a little bit about what we'll be hearing today and who is in the room with her.
Hey, cool. Can everybody hear me? Hopefully. Cool. So yeah, my name's Jessie. I've got my lovely wife Sasha with me. She's going to play some guitar with me. So first I'm going to read a piece from the Personal History Museum, which is a project online, the links in the list of links there. And you can view the, turn my volume up, speak louder. Great. So I'm going to stand up, that might help. So you can look at the objects online if you want to, there's links in there. So the first one is my Rust troll doll collection. So imagine 30 of those troll dolls that have different colored hair. And the point of the Personal History Museum is to use objects as a portal for ways of making sense of childhood and, for me, gender and sexuality and all those good things. So the Rust troll doll collection. I was obsessed with troll dolls when I was a tween. I collected the magazines and the dolls, and I laid them out with the kind of order and art direction that only a drill sergeant or a compulsive theatre lesbian could. In a parallel universe where my tween self is a lot more avant-garde and self-aware, I like to believe that this collection was not a whim of childhood fancy, but my first attempt to explore and subvert gender norms in a very heteronormative society, small town, New Zealand. Walk with me. The troll is created without gender, not just without the explicit parts of genitalia like Barbie dolls. If you were to take off the clothes and lay each troll bare, it would be impossible to identify which one was the bride and which one was the groom. Trollland has transcended the constructs of gender and recognizes that clothing and hair are simply tools for performing gender and should be used for self-expression rather than gender identity. All trolls, for instance, wear their hair long, regardless of their gender. They could cut it if they felt so inclined, but they'd rather have the flexibility of long hair. A troll could easily be a ballet dancer one day and a construction worker the next. I enjoyed this flexibility. For instance, I imagine that the scuba diver troll identifies as male and uses the pronouns him and he. However, his gender expression is more feminine by restrictive human standards. He enjoys wearing pink hair and two-toned diving outfits and is as likely to find himself wearing a dress as overalls. In the movie franchise terms, there are 3 films in the troll oeuvre: Trolls, Trolls Holiday, and Trolls The Beat Goes On. In 2005, some genius marketing executive team decided that adding a Z to the name would modernize and reinvigorate the franchise, but the kids saw straight through the scam and ultimately the Z was dropped. In the most recent film, DreamWorks, of course, betrayed the trolls' progressive nature and made the trolls into these hyper-gender normative creatures who live in a realm with queens and kings and princesses. But maybe, just maybe, the next hit in the Trolls franchise will be a genderqueer romp where the hero is a troll with a masculine voice with they-them pronouns who wears tutus some days and biker leathers the next. Author's note, studies show that Trollland does favor long hair, and this is a bias that the Troll Human Rights Commission is working on breaking down, along with biases towards light-skinned trolls and the inclusive inclusivity of disabled trolls, which are generally very underrepresented in troll land media. Cool, thank you. This is, that's the reading part of the program, and now Sasha and I are going to perform 2 songs and slightly different tone. No segue needed, except for that it's going to be odd. Okay, this song is called 3 Reasons to Burn. Everyone keeps telling me everything's gonna be fine. Everyone keeps telling me the hurt's gonna heal with time. Everyone keeps telling me that I'm not losing my mind, but it don't feel that way. It don't feel that way, 'cause I've got a hole in my heart and each day it grows like a wildfire where the wind blows. The pain in my chest, it feeds on pride, and I won't stop until it's satisfied. And I've got 3 reasons to burn. You, me, and her. 3 reasons to burn. You, me, and her. Everyone keeps telling me that 2 wrongs don't make it right. Everyone keeps telling me that good girls gotta make nice. Everyone keeps telling me that you can't fight fire with fire, but it don't feel that way. It don't feel that way. I've got a hole in my heart, it feeds on pride, and I won't stop until it's satisfied. The pain in my chest, each day it grows like a wildfire where the wind blows. And I've got 3 reasons to burn. You, me, and her. 3 reasons to burn. You, me, and her. Cool. Thanks, guys. We're gonna sing one more song. I'm gonna grab a guitar here. I'm hoping the balance is okay out there. This song is this is a kind of apathetic leaving song. Kind of, it's about when you leave a relationship, and it's not like the worst relationship in the world, but you just know that it's time to leave. All right. Ready, Sasha?
Ready.
I did all the dishes and I changed all the sheets, and I'm making it easy, and I'm keeping so much fun to rock out and to know that it's like 3 in the afternoon here in New Zealand, and not knowing how many of our neighbours are at home with their sleeping children. Hard to know. Cool. I now have the great pleasure of introducing Albert to you, who many of you know is an artist and game maker and builder of physical things, but I'm gonna give you his rap sheet anyway because it's worth remembering how wonderful our friends are. So Albert's work tends to explore the ways we change the spaces we are a part of by reinterpreting the rules in these spaces and creating new ones. Albert is going to read from his very first zine, which is called 10,000 Feasts, and he's going to read some of that zine and 2 poemlings. So please shake your hands wildly for Albert.
Thanks, Jessie. That was beautiful. Thanks so much for joining us with your music and your readings. So this is my first zine. It's called 10,000 Feasts. I wasn't, like, I've always thought about zines and never, and it took me a long time to make one, but because I've been hanging out with Christina for a long time, I felt like inadequate and like I wanted to make one for myself. And I was just thinking about it for a while, but I went to China in the beginning of January, beginning of the year. And while I was there, I just started kind of keeping a travel diary. And as I was writing, it kind of started to take shape as something that I could cut up and fold into a little book, and I could finally fulfill my feel adequate and meaningful and successful because I was making a thing. But are you gonna run it?
Yeah,
okay. So first, I'm gonna read a couple selections from. Actually, first I'm going to read a couple selections from a zine that I'm working on. It's going to be a tiny zine called Poemlings. You don't have to worry about screen share for now. And these are things that might become poems, but more likely they're just going to be little things that could have turned into poems, but won't. Imagine in spring, plant our ideas as poems and promises, tend to them carefully as some light returns, as the frost loses its grasp on our grounding, or forget to transplant them as they outgrow their pots. Possibilities are endless for sprouting seeds, including to wither and fade. So, building is hard, but watching a shovel full of dirt fly gracefully and disintegrate itself as it arcs into a wheelbarrow, or watching a crack slowly form in concrete as you repeatedly pound it with the tip of a chisel, or watching an 1/8 of an inch sawn off the end of a piece of wood disappear into nothing can make it worth it maybe a couple times. What else was I gonna pick? There's somewhere in here. I'm scrolling through like this 7-page doc. When the gears of quantification have nothing left to commodify, they turn to humans in every case. We got used to throwing everything away, and then we willfully became the trash. The biggest problem with the dumpster fire is that we are inside the dumpster. And the last one of these. A new study suggests that scientific theories provide new metaphors with which to interpret the absurdity and illogic of our emotional lives. This corroborates the general theory that the institutions of science resemble a very inefficient form of poetry. And those are some poem links. Now I'm going to pull from this book. So this is the one that I mentioned earlier. These are diary entries, basically from my trip in China. I ended up cutting them up and putting them into, this is like a 40-page thing. Yeah, I went to China at the beginning of the year, with my brother and my dad, my brother's partner. And we're going back for a wedding. What are you laughing at? It's distracting. We're going back for a wedding for my second cousin? I think that's my second cousin, but in like Chinese, we just call them brothers. Apparently, I don't really know how any of this works. I actually like barely know him. Like I met him a couple times on my visits to China, but like it's happened so seldom. And I was born here and I grew up here, so China is like a totally foreign place to me. And my dad's like, we got to go back. It's like important, like, and it's an important duty that we have to like kind of represent our family at this wedding. And I was like, I don't even know who this person is. But it turned out he was really great. He's a really great guy. He's like a couple years older than me. But it was really interesting to kind of be in China this time with a little bit more awareness of like who I am and what exists in the world. So I'll read a couple entries from this. Our trip was planned for about 2 weeks, 16 days between departure and return. Dad and Robert had this conversation, trying to plan out the rest of the trip after the wedding. We figured we might as well figure it out when we got here and just buy tickets to and from China. Robert and I had the impression that we would spend a long time in Hong Kong. Something exciting after small town Gonghao, and Dad wanted more time here in the town to relax and hang out with people, take meals, see family friends. It was striking to me to think of such a big trip as a time of relaxation. And I suppose I've never gotten over the idea that travel must be traveled to the fullest, even though I completely agree with and even aspire to the wisdom that a manic, overpacked trip does not compare to a slower, richer experience. It is beginning to make more sense to me, though, as I mature. Time feels so limited and precious when you're 20, just starting to have control over your life. Time is inflated when you have to carefully measure your days off work. The socially enforced anxiety doesn't much let up. I'm only now starting to understand all this stuff that comes from poets and proponents of mindfulness, the cultivation of boredom as a creative energy resource. Partially, I shifted by moving to Corvallis and watching Christina model it, seeing the kind of work she can make without the barrage of activity. Dad knows it, though he has the advantage of partial retirement. But when he's in China, it's not an anxiety to see that it's not an anxiety to see things that drives him. Just a few moments in quiet thought, then peace with whatever comes after. I didn't expect this trip to be as enjoyable as it was. I decided a few years ago that world travel doesn't belong in my list of hobbies. I try to create enough surprise for myself at home that it doesn't take a foreign country to provide it. Still, the last few years of doing the game/experience/immersive design thing have really changed me. Whoa, I'm getting a phone call right now? Okay, ignore that, sorry. That was not part of the, sorry. Hopefully, okay, I'll ignore whatever that calls. Back up. I try to create enough surprise for myself at home that it doesn't take a foreign country to provide enjoyment. Still, the last few years of doing the game experience immersive design thing have really changed me to be open to more of anything, I think. I've paid more attention to the minute wonders of public life, adventured through random closed doors, and that kind of thing can happen anywhere. Might as well be in China too. I'm waiting for all the memories of my previous trips to flood back. I'll try to take Alex's advice to plan time to sit and reminisce. I think the slideshow came on as I was reading this. This is an album of all the like a lot of the meals that we had. Hence the title 10,000 Feasts. We had these all these giant meals there. And by the end of it, I was totally sick of it. Every meal, I was just super full and uncomfortable and unhappy. But that's the culture there. And it's you go there and it's just people are feeding you as much as possible. Flying for almost half an hour above Hong Kong on the gondola cable car, or what are these things called? We share the space with a tour guide and our foreigner charge. Far below us, the hills roll up and down, divided by a hiking path for the intrepid, who will walk for 3 hours to reach this gigantic Buddha statue at a distant temple. Or it used to be distant. My dad said there wasn't this sky basket in the 70s when my parents last went. The tour guide points out all the low vegetation that paints the hills. Says some years ago, after they cleared all this land to install machinery and equipment for the tram, the humidity, rains of the tropical climate cause constant mudslides. So they helicopter dropped their own rain of grassy seeds, brush, and the roots held up the dirt below. So we can pay $50 to take this ride to an amusement village. I imagine that some of those walking below us walk to dodge the price tag. I imagine emerging after sweating for hours makes this temple visit more of a pilgrimage. But churches and temples are attractions now for those who can afford to ride the coaster. I can't really say what the experience was like if I were prepared to be awed by a religious presence. I wonder what of it was cleared to make room for a convenient day trip for each of millions of tourists. Who sent in helicopters to fill the gap? Tourists who sent in helicopters to fill the gap with gift shops, photo booths, 360 VR experiences, and all the replacements, increasingly complex as something slips away. We were in this this restaurant. Do we have the slideshow still going, or did it end? Okay, whatever. I put it back on, I guess. We were at this restaurant, and one of my dad's friends, he brought us from Hong Kong to Guangzhou, and we were having another meal with his wife, and she was like this tea buyer for like restaurants. And so we're in this restaurant, and we're sitting down this like giant banquet hall, or it's not a banquet hall actually. It's like there's these private rooms in like the fancy Chinese restaurants. And she comes up and she sits down, and we're like kind of getting ready to like have some tea while we're waiting for food to come. And she takes a sip of the tea. And then she's like, "What is this crap?" And she calls the waiter over and berates him for like making bad tea. And she like pulls her purse out and takes out her own tea, like 3 bags, and she says like, "Don't use this plastic container. Throw that away. We're gonna get like fresh water. I'm just gonna basically direct you on how to do all this." And she's just like complaining about the way that they were doing stuff. It was pretty funny. I guess like that's the way people engage with food there. It's more, there's like a bunch of, there's a sense of like of competition almost. Oh yeah, it's our last morning in Hong Kong, and I'm getting so tired of traveling, ready to be home. There are 3 days left. Today we head up to Guangzhou, getting a ride with Dad's billionaire mafia friend, visiting his wife or second wife after hanging out with his girlfriend all weekend. I don't understand, but it certainly doesn't feel like the thing I should ask about. Dad's talked about how he was connected with the Chinese organized crime folks in Portland back in the day. The Black Society, they call it in Chinese. Similar stuff, but maybe it gets you further in Hong Kong. Or maybe it is an inevitable part of doing business here. After all, the idea that the world is ever or could ever be fair and free of corruption is modern. It's manifested in the American left as egalitarian classlessness, and in the right as enforceable law and order, as ideals, as rhetoric. My dad's still in the generation of nothing is fair, because the China he grew up in and escaped wasn't. When Apang is driving me around Guangzhou, we have a late lunch with Robert and Caitlin, and he talks about another perspective. He works in the city's health department, doing inspections on 1,000 of the restaurants in the north side of the city. My window into Chinese government is almost entirely news of corruption, bribery, and hooliganism. But Panguo says that the younger generation of China doesn't want to be associated with that stuff. They're paid well enough to live well, so they do their jobs without risking them for a quick buck. Still, they have to navigate this transition because older restaurant owners still believe the inspection is partially, if not entirely, a matter of relationships. So as an inspector, he has to let them treat him to a meal every now and then. Let them save face. It's a delicate thing, though, to trust, to believe, to seek possibility rather than lament the perceived inevitability of the present, to live according to vision. God, if I were to hear myself now when I was a teenager, I'd roll my eyes really hard. Okay, and that's all for now. There is more in this book if you want a copy. There'll be links later. Thanks for listening. I'm going to now introduce our next reader. I'm going to take a breath to... I'm like really nervous right now. I don't know why. I feel weird. I was like more nervous than I was like live. Okay. And I'm really excited to introduce our next reader, performer. Donna Chan, who's coming in from San Francisco, is going to be doing 2 spoken word pieces for us today. And make sure to check out her links in the link file that we've been sending around. I'll give it to you, Donna. Go for it.
Awesome. Thanks, Albert. So this first piece really came from me trying to grapple with the past 2 years, both, experiences that I've had personally and then also things that are happening at societal level. A recipe.
Oh, wait, is it because we can't hear you?
I don't know.
Oh, you have a...
Wait, are you...
Hey, can you hear me? Is it good? Okay, cool. Okay, awesome. Hello, everyone. Okay, so first piece, a recipe. Take 10 cups of white privilege. Get the kind that talks over you, walks over you, and tells you what you really think. It's readily available mostly anywhere. Take a breastful of, I should start with a trigger warning, actually. Cutting, some violence, sexual harassment, and assault. So just watching out for peeps. I'll start over. A recipe. Take 10 cups of white privilege. Get the kind that talks over you, walks over you, and tells you what you really think. It's readily available mostly anywhere. Take a breastful of sexual assault, a grab of the ass, a pinch and a finger, and all the God-forsaken places. Add salt for an hour until you taste bitterness. Take all the mirrors in the room, thrash and smash and burn them. Dust the ashes on the counter. Take a liter of salt water, the kind you can only get from scraping the bottom of a well between 2 legs. Pour into an iron vessel lined with oil and clench close to your chest. Bring it to a raging boil. Mix and knead the tender virgin dough the way a man might grip and rip a woman's flesh. Place under the humid air of hot breath, a collective narcissistic heat. Watch the filthy yeast rise white privilege into white power. Now take the meat and a thin knife. Cut slowly, methodically into 1,000 pieces for 29 years. Make sure to slit the wrists, let the thick red pool. That's how it loses its power. Wash the milk for its young, curdle and sour. Weaken it so that it cannot fight back. Make several definitive cuts to the throat, strangle it, break the neck if you must. Let the blood crumble and crust. It mustn't cry or have a voice. While the meat is no longer moving but still warm, take the heart in your hands. Feel it pulsing, its ardent struggle. Really treat this part with care. Take a tenderizing mallet. Pound it. Pound it. Pound it. Pound it. Pound it. Pound it until it's black and blue and bruised, until its tendons and cartilage and soul can no longer refuse. You want it tender, pliable, unrecognizable, because now tell the meat in all its dark and red and yellow tones that it is fish, and it will believe you. Okay, that was the first one. Heart work. Thank you, everyone. And now on to a happier piece. So the second piece, you know, as Albert shared, I'm on a journey to really find my truth, especially as an artist. And this was the first piece that just sort of like came out of me when I was on that journey. So something has awakened, like a switch that's been flipped. This idea, this feeling, it's rising and it's baking. For the first time in my life, it can no longer be forsaken, because now I understand. I'm glad that on my deathbed, I want to feel clad in satiety, not I wish I had, I wish I had. I wish I had let my inner genius out to stand on a stage as big as one can contain me, and bam, explosion, I knock them out. Then waves and waves and waves, transformation, fallout. I wish I had stood for something big. I wish I had given every drop of me that there is to give, to stretch and to squish, to morph and to dig and to dig and to dig, to swig and to pig, to zig and to jig, until all that there's left of me is a twig. I wish I had lived in Bali, Somali, Bengali, a real bialy, authentic Tamale, to move in the world on my own terms, to savor the bounty and lush, climb, climb, climb the mountains, Nepali, reconnect with nature, my bosom and my blossoms. That's the ultimate royal flush. I wish I had made and created and created and created and created, even if most of it was sod and shit, because Mozart composed over 600 works of art, you see. He got saturated. The perfectionist in me wants perfection, but quantity over quality is where genius and truth get consummated, get activated. But what is my skill, my calling, my craft? I'm wandering, yearning, searching. Sometimes I feel like I'm bobbing, clinging to a life raft. But those moments when I'm floating and flowing and glowing and showing, that's when it's just pure witchcraft. So I must keep rowing. I want to find my truth, see my truth, be my truth, spread my truth, because then I will have tried and vied and thrived, not just lived and wished and then died. Thank you. Yay. Okay. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce Christina Tran. So Christina Tran makes tender, autobiographical, comic essays that imagine and call us towards a more compassionate world. Christina has been making webcomics since 2014 and self-publishing zines since 2015. Christina is sharing from Things I Cannot Say, a new collection of comics.
Thank you. I like the spoken word bio. We should all have spoken word bios at these events. Okay. This is nerve-wracking. Okay, hold on. Okay, I'm also dealing with tech. Let me go back to speaker view, and then I'm going to. That work? Okay. I'm just delaying because I'm. Need to share my screen. Play slideshow. You'll see that? Okay. Okay. So it was funny when we were talking about doing this zine reading, and it's a launch for this new zine called Things I Cannot Say. It's a collection of short comics. And the hard part it was thinking about having to say these things out loud, which are hard to say. So I'm going to be reading from a few different things to give myself some journey and some strength. These first two are just a couple from my Dear Daughter series that I did. And I had written tiny letters to the future generations and pairing them with, speak up, okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Anyway, so this is from the Dear Daughter series, pairing tiny letters to the future generations with old pictures of my parents. And at some point it was like, who knows who was talking to whom and where the voices were coming from. And so the ones that I keep returning to actually are the ones that give me strength. So, dear daughter, sometimes I get scared when I get the chance to do something that I know will help me grow. But I've learned to follow that fear, and I hope you always follow yours. Dear daughter, I know you always thought I was too loud, but I was just tired of being silenced for so long. And when I was thinking about the new comics collection, they were very much drawing from these diary comics that I had done in spring of 2017. This is the zine Here and Now. So I'm going to read two things from here. January 30th, 2017. There are answers in the silence, Gordon Hempton says. During the podcast with Krista Tippett, she tries to articulate the connection between silence and quiet, between that and knowing and being oneself, between that and safety and the ability to be vulnerable, between vulnerability and listening to each other, which I intuit as foundational to and connected to empathy and connection and trust and emotional healing, which all build resilient communities. All of these things which we so desperately need as a nation right now, have needed and will need, but all at the mercy of our constant noisiness of our environment, and of the constant inflow of noise through our media channels, and of our constant state of being plugged in and multitasking. These days, the anxiety has been kicking in once I start work at my laptops in the mornings. It escalates to disengagement, numbs me out so I can't work, which spirals into gremlins of shame and cowardice and fear. And you call yourself an activist. I try to think back to the last times I felt calm enough to feel engaged, the last time the inner gremlins quieted down. Two in recent memory. One was listening to this podcast, making connections to my past work and wanting to tell others about it. Silence is the think tank of the soul. The second was walking amongst the greenery of Golden Gate Park, in silence, naturally. March 3rd, 2017. In Diaries of Spaceport Janitor, you play a Sandy drone whose job it is to pick up trash on the spaceport. Howard said, I played before bed and dreamed of cutting up pieces of my pants and eating them. With each piece of trash that you pick up, you must decide what to do with it. Drop, keep, eat, or incinerate. Sometimes you keep in the hopes of being able to sell it to one of the marketplace vendors, but mostly they don't want your wares, and mostly you never have enough money to buy theirs. Although you can't eat much in Diaries of a Spaceport Janitor, the idea is provocative. In Carla Speed McNeil's Finder series, her main character Jaeger is both a finder with hunter-tracker skills and a sin eater, who through ritual consumption absorbs sins and absolves souls. The alchemy of healers and the alchemy of artists is that they eat the pains of the world and transform it into something more, as a conduit or a channeler. This is especially the unacknowledged emotional labor many people do in their lives, especially women and people of color. During the season of transition, while I grapple with my roles within systems of oppression and within patterns of displacement, I must decide what to do with each piece of junk I encounter. The ghosts of redevelopment, the white noise of urban life, my own unconscious prejudices, disconnection and disengagement, Funnily enough, in a Vice.com interview, the co-creators of the game say their aim was to create an anti-adventure within this capitalist dystopia. Like the janitor, I must remember that my batteries will run low every evening and that I will need to eat and sleep. The search for beauty and dignity in this routine can continue tomorrow. So that was spring of 2017, trying to figure out, so those were diary comics from January through March of 2017, which was a tumultuous time for our communities. The first 100 days of 45's administration, and then I had moved a bunch of times. All I could do was keep writing and keep doodling these like diary comics, but they helped to get me through that. And then in the fall, I was able to start putting together more narrative stories. So this comic essay came from Things I Cannot Say. Invisibility. This past weekend, I went to the Asian American Comic-Con Summit in LA. I was curious how I would feel about this scene. I was going to test the waters and see if I belonged. Truth be told, I feel much more comfortable at Zine Fest than at Comic-Cons, though the trappings look the same, the vibe is worlds apart. To me, zines are DIY and punk rock. While there seems to be a ladder to climb in comics, to remind you where you stand and how far you have yet to go. This is compounded as an Asian American creator. The Women Warriors panel shared stories of the talk they had with their parents about wanting to be in creative industries. Sarah Kuhn said, even when they accept your creative career, there's still this idea of whatever you're doing, you have to be the best. Former Chief of Diversity and Executive at NBC Universal, Paula Madison, was in the audience and told a story of amassing a panel of Asian American actors, all of whom had hidden their acting interests behind science degrees in college. Is there a cultural switch that needs to happen to shift a millennia of thinking? Undoubtedly, this fuels the fears and the anxieties. Many artists have drawn and written about their inner critics. Lucy Bellwood has her demon dialogue. Sarah Beacon calls her head monster, and Yumi Sakugawa invites hers out to tea and cake. Even if I call my voices gremlins, you're not a real comics artist, so you don't belong here, and can tell myself that they are not me. I fear the gremlins are being fed by ancient whispers coming from deep beneath our feet and way back in time. You'll never belong unless you work harder and smarter and more. There are the voices that compare me with my peers and shame me for not being more accomplished. You should be published by now, artwork should be way better. And confusing enough, there are other voices that warn me to downplay my accomplishments for fear of coming off as too pretentious. It's only 2 pages and in the anthology, it's not that big of a deal, it's just a fluke anyway. Beneath them both is fear and a desire to remain invisible. Keep your head down, don't make waves. This is invisibility that was a necessity and a comfort to many of our immigrant parents. We have the luxury of visibility that they didn't have. Arun Singh reminded us that for our parents, visibility ran the risk of being targeted as other or alien when they were just trying to get by. I must have swallowed these beliefs at some point because I find myself and my work stuck behind this wall. I find myself scared of scale and with an aversion to the PR side of being an independent artist. Why can't I be more like that guy who's like runs up to you with the book open to his story and he's like, my story's on page 28, you wanna buy a copy? The problem is that in giving up my visibility, I've also been giving up my power, my voice, my influence, my impact. As Krista Suh, the founder of the Pussy Hat Project, said, whether I speak up or stay silent, I'm still pleasing somebody. When I stay silent, white patriarchy benefits. In a lot of ways, George Takei, activist, actor, author, and husband, was the patron saint of this Asian American Comic-Con Summit. He said, we have to participate and be visible. We have to be a part of America, and America now. He is both a testament to the rich history of Asian American dissent and organizing, and a clarion and urgent call to action, full of inspiration and hope for the future. both rooted in the value of our voices and in an imperative to stand tall in our power. Show up, speak out, make waves. Yay. I have no mouse cursor. Okay. There it goes. So I have one more short thing I want to share is, so things I cannot say were short comics, and they're what I call comic essays. And more I've been wanting to create more. And I actually wrote this morning and wasn't sure what it is, but I think, okay, I'm just gonna read it first. So I just started reading The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin about a moon colony of anarchists on Anarres. The power of science fiction is the ability to throw light on the dysfunction in our current ways of being that we often take for granted. It's hard to imagine alternatives when we've lived our whole lives a certain way. I exist in a culture that is patriarchal, colonialist, capitalist, and shaped by white supremacy. We cannot escape the effects that these systemic forces have brought on our world, but in a fractal way, we can escape recreating these same patterns in our day-to-day lives and in how we live in relationship with each other and with our world. In order to imagine and co-create new ways of being, what we need are possibility models and shared stories of what could be. That's what I want to write about, essays and comic essays about possibility models and the things we've tried in the margins. So that's sort of what, after I wrote it, I was like, oh, that's just the intro to the next collection of comic essays about community-supported art and about other ways of, other economic models and collective decision-making and all these different things. So that is what I want to do. And and we will throw in the chat again a link to everyone's stuff. So Christina, Albert's, Donna's, and Jessie's, we all have links to more of our work and newsletters or email addresses or Patreon pages or coffee pages. So if you want to read more, support our stuff, Albert just threw that link in the chat. And I saw one question about, so we're gonna do like a Q&A now. So if you have Q&As for any of the artists, put them in chat and I'll be moderating that. And I'm gonna catch up on the chat. But there was one question earlier that was for Albert, and Kat was wondering if you wrote your zine while, like along the way during your trip.
Why don't you just keep your...
Yeah, I'll keep it.
Yeah. So I'll talk through Christina's.
Do you want to like come over here?
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah, look at Christina. Yeah, I was there, and we were just kind of like hanging out for the first day or two. The wedding was like 2 days after we got there, and so I just started writing when we were just sitting around. There wasn't much going on. It was a small town. Most of the time we were just waiting for the next meal in that first place that we were in for a week. So yeah, I started writing, and a lot of stuff happened. Oh, and I'm gonna get a link that works. Sorry about that one.
Okay, so Donna just shared it.
Oh, you did? Cool.
And Donna, we did not actually read your bio.
Sorry, Donna, that was my fault. I'm terrible.
So I'm going to read it now. Donna Chan is a wholehearted performer and occasional brush pen artist. She's on a journey toward finding, speaking, and sharing her truth. To this end, she's currently exploring spoken word and bodily movement in the context of solo performance, a space where she can create and perform her own stories around the delicious squishiness of identity, womanhood, and race. So Donna, actually, can you talk a little bit about how it felt to share the pieces you shared today and sort of what's next on the plate for you?
Yeah, absolutely. To share the pieces, it definitely felt powerful. I would say like this is because I'm on this journey of really owning myself as an artist. I would say these pieces really just like like hurl themselves out of me. So they're very much desiring to be heard. And so what is next is I'm actually building out the world of my first piece. So I'm doing a solo performance in June that's going to really center around anger and sorrow. Basically, the emotions I think I and perhaps a lot of us have really tried to numb or tamp down the past 2 years because of societal things, personal things, and for me, it's reaching a head in terms of I think anger is something we don't talk about enough, and especially the sorrow, like the huge well of sorrow underneath the anger and the nuance of that. So that's really what I hope to explore in my work moving forward.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's, it's funny, like I'm in a different place than when I wrote the Things I Cannot Say zine, but it does feel like this last 2 years have been really tough, and like a lot of us having to come back out and like get through that, and now are like ready to like, okay, we're back.
Yes, re-engage with the world. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Jessie, I had the same question actually. Can you talk more about your music and what your plans for that and how people can find that online?
Yeah, I was just, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just writing a message which I'll send now, and it will be irrelevant because I'm going to say it, that I'll add my SoundCloud, and you can sign up for my newsletter. But I'm going to record. I just moved back to New Zealand from San Francisco about 10 months ago, and so this is like my first foray into like really solo writing. So I really appreciate the generosity of this audience, because it's been it's a wild ride when you're suddenly like, and this is my work, without the cover of 7 white dude guitar players and white dude musicians behind or in front of you, which is how I've usually played music. So I'm going to record actually on the 4th and 5th of May, and so I will have some stuff out after that, which I will gladly forward to you if you are interested. Thank you so much for all your kind words. I'm curious, Donna, if you're like, there was a part of me, I know in your bio it says that you're maybe a more physical performer than and I was like, there's a moment where I was like, shit, this is gonna go like virtual reality and she's gonna come climbing through the screen, it was like, and when you thumped your body, it was like there's this powerful like physicality to what you do, and I'm really excited to see where you take the physical aspect of your performance, if that's something that you're interested in.
Thank you. This is me making a heart. No, thank you. Yes, absolutely. That's something I'm definitely exploring currently. So more to come. I think it's, especially like dealing with emotions like anger and sorrow, is almost like my words weren't enough. I felt them so viscerally that I needed to get them out of my body somehow. So thank you for seeing that and appreciating it. Yeah.
Another question from Kat. Donna, do you do slam poetry? Are you going to?
Oh, no, but I want to. I really want to. I think I've finally stumbled across something that really, like a form of performance that really resonates with me. So I really want to continue exploring that. So if you have leads or suggestions, I'm very much absorbing all of that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's an interesting, when we like are able to explore and then like find our form. That like feels really energizing. Albert, that's typing. No, you're good. I was gonna ask you about your forms and what's sort of next for you. muted. Everyone's muted. Okay.
Everyone's muted. I'm here. That's a hard question to answer because I don't really know what, like, I don't know. I feel like I don't really know what I want to do with form generally. I'm kind of experimenting and moving. Maybe like maybe some of that.
You do you do so many.
Yeah, I think some of like Min rubbed off on me too. Like Min was here in March and just like playing with a lot of kind of formlessness and experimenting with this idea of letting go of like every constraint. Almost.
Tell them 2 minutes.
Sure. Yeah. Min is our friend who is our artist in residence for the month of March. She's a friend of mine from college, sorry, I just got a pronoun update this morning. It is a friend of ours from college. Min was here for a month doing Buto in town. That just started practicing, going through the classes and really just like going all out, being a performer. I guess like there was more form there than what I can describe. But I think like right now, as far as themes go, I'm looking into understanding the ways that we can play with social structures and social systems, the ways that we can appropriate infrastructure to work for us, to serve our natural desires to play, connect, and be a part of each other's lives. And I think a lot of that just is like a kind of playful anarchy. Is where I'm going.
And did going to China with your family make you feel more connected to your Chinese roots or less?
More, yeah, definitely. Like I don't know about my personal connection, but I understood like where a lot of things came from. You know, I guess I would say yes, yes, more connected. In like learning more about my dad, I had opportunities to like kind of hear stories from him that I hadn't heard before. There was one period when we were on this island out in Hong Kong, and he saw this like rural building, just kind of like tucked in the jungle. And he started telling me about like when he escaped from China to Hong Kong and like and crossed the river and you know dodged like the guards and hid in some like shack that was like owned by some farmer out in the countryside, and he's like pointing at this like shack over there. And he's like, that reminds me of this thing. And I started to like see some of that. Yeah, I've written about it a little bit, but I've had this opportunity to kind of like my dad's like, you know, like this is a parent's relationship. My dad's kind of conservative. It's like something that kind of comes, I think, from like being a immigrant at that time. I think conservatism like speaks to the Chinese immigrant in that way. But having some time with my dad in China, but also like having spent more time with him recently, I got to understand him, like his values that go beyond any labels, right? It helps me like kind of respect him as a person first.
Are those stories of him escaping in this scene or a sequel?
I guess they'll be in a sequel. I didn't fit them in this one.
And just
but
like
I do have a lot of stories that I do want to share.
I wanted to share this zine is really beautiful because it's all like handwritten, and Albert's handwriting is. For everyone, general question: how much do you share, practice, or refine your work with others while you're creating them? How much do you share, practice, refine your work while you're creating them? I've been playing with that more. I think this year, before I was doing webcomics and just making them really fast and like iterating them on my own and putting it out. And this year I've been really seeking more community among peers who are doing writing and art, and also some mentorship. So I've had to, in that process, figure out how to share and actually get feedback. And it's like really scary, but also really like it ultimately serves the story, right? To actually do that. And I have a Patreon page that I've been sharing sort of behind the scenes for this longer graphic novel I'm working on, about my sabbatical, to grieve, and how hard it is to slow down and actually feel the things we need to feel in our world. And because that's such a long project that will take me, it's taken me 8 months, and it's going to take me another 8 months to finish. In order to like keep some motivation, I've been sharing some behind the scenes through the Patreon and like getting feedback from various places. So that's been a new process. Yeah. Anyone of the performers, you want to raise your hand and I'll unmute. How do you share? All right, just pick someone. I'll pick you then. Or no, I guess I would pick, no, I don't want to pick. Someone raise their hand.
Okay. I'll go quickly. So how much do I share my work? I'm pretty comfortable sharing. I like to share a lot, but I've been kind of disconnected from like the internet. Like I haven't really felt that strongly about engaging too hard. So stuff goes up as I feel like it. As far as refining my work, I refine very little. This book was like barely edited, and I just kind of cut up the pieces and rearranged them a little, and then turned it into a book. My work tends to be just whatever I am feeling, and then something happens hopefully. But I try to do a lot of it, and then sometimes it's fun, and hopefully it's weird enough that it's interesting.
Oh, I literally have a draft about the weirdness of sharing your work as an artist these days, and because of the weirdness of social media and engaging with that. So anyway, that's the future comic essay.
So I guess like one more thing that I would add to that is that I like to share in terms of gifts to people. I like to make things that I can give away, and that kind of changes the nature of expecting things to be like good or bad. They're just, I want things to be based on a relationship, and that is what matters more than quality. I'm gonna pick Jessie.
You picked me, Albert? Is that what you said? I try to share. I'm trying to be more conscious of sharing more regularly as a form of editing and developing. And at times in my life, I've been better at it than others. And I think that there's something really powerful about hearing your words, even if you're just reading them to one other person out loud or singing a song to one other person out loud, because you hear it in such a different way. I'm working with these musicians for this recording I'm going to do next week, and I had a big long session with them yesterday, and it was so terrifying to just like play it and have them be like, oh, okay, well, what about what's this and what's this? But it was so valuable to sit through the terror of it, and I realized in myself that I have to book those things early in the morning when I'm feeling a lot of gusto. I like book appointments to make myself share things, because if I waited to do it at a time when it came up, it was like spontaneous, I wouldn't do it. I would always be too terrified. So I have to trick myself. And I think tricking yourself is a really good method of creative practice.
Yeah. Self-tag, like and Donna's turn to answer, and we'll tag. So Donna, how do you share your process or in-process stuff? And also, when you say you feel these pieces come out of you viscerally, can you expand on what feelings you experienced when you were in the process of putting the piece together?
Yes. So to the first question, that's interesting, because I think as a live performer, a stage performer, I'm still trying to feel out how to do that. When I prepare my pieces, it's, along the theme of me trying to speak my truth, it actually comes out pretty well formed when I'm just speaking my truth. But really finding the audience, so that's why I'm so grateful for a platform like this. But otherwise, how to share it just more widely in the world when I don't have an audience. I'm not quite sure on how to do that yet. I think I'm still exploring. But yeah, hopefully that answers that question. And then the second one, when you say you feel these pieces come out, you viscerally can expand it. Yeah. I was talking with one of my teachers, mentors, and it feels like an onion, because especially with anger and sorrow, the outer layers are anger, and the deeper you go, the meatier the flesh is, and then the core really is like just weighty, humid, solid sorrow. So the piece I shared today was really like one of the outer layers, because I'm working my way towards the core, I would say, because the anger and the sorrow is overwhelming, and I have a day job, so I need to keep that day job. So the process has been, what is this? Anger, sorrow, human core. Human core. Yes, I love that. Yes, I'm slowly working my way in there. And so I think I'm trying to be conscientious of like self-care and taking care of myself while I'm peeling away those layers, but I am peeling away those layers. And then my teacher actually brought up another point. She was like, each piece that you share, it's almost like if you take an onion, that the top layer, the top part of the layer is thinner than the bottom part of the layer. And she's like, your work sort of feels like that. Each piece that you present, that you sort of ease into it, and then you get like thick. So I think I'm doing that slowly to get to the core of those emotions. It's a delicate balance with self-care. Yeah. Hopefully that answered that.
Thank you. I'm going to do one more question before time.
No, there's 2 questions on the board.
Yeah, we can do 2. Wait, what was the second one?
One from Iran and one from
I see the Julian one. Tell me if that
I'll do the general.
Okay, I'll do the Julian one.
These are the last 2 questions.
Yeah, so as children of immigrants, do you feel like you belong to the country of your ancestors in any way, or do you feel like the U.S. is your only home country? I actually am gonna like slightly reframe or like slightly direct that at both Albert to talk about your experience in Hong Kong and how you felt about that, and then I'm curious how Jessie feels having moved back and forth between U.S. and New Zealand.
I guess I will then answer my part of it, although I suppose all of us could answer. Everyone's children of immigrants somehow. I was really struck when I was in Hong Kong. In some ways, it was like I felt more at home there. Like I felt more like the people around me were like me than I have anywhere else that I've lived. As an Asian American, growing up in, Corvallis is where I grew up. It's down here, and it's a very white place generally. And Oregon is a very white place. There's less diversity here than I was around California. Even when I was in California and like LA, where I have a lot of family that are Chinese Americans, immigrants. There's something different about the kind of experience that you have. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that like I don't feel quite at home with among people who don't have the experience of being sort of this like mixed culture. And I don't quite feel at home with Asian, with like my family who's like straight Chinese and immigrants, because I'm not an immigrant in some ways, right? I that's part of my history in a way, but it's not who I am. I'm a person who's here, who's has this kind of like mix. And so Hong Kong was really interesting because I felt like I never spent a lot of time in Hong Kong before, and Hong Kong was a place that I saw people who had like a lot of Western culture kind of like steeped into decades of their like Asian culture. There was something about that legacy of colonialism that existed like for the whole population that was different than anything else that I had experienced before. That said, I do think that this is my home. This is like America, Oregon, California, the West Coast, at least. I don't know about that. Like, I don't think I felt at home in New York at all. Not one bit. But the West Coast is a place that feels like a home place to me. And I find my belonging among the people that I care about as much as I can.
Well, that was fun. Anyway, sorry. Jessie, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I guess I would say that. So just a little bit of background. My mother's American and was born in a small town in Wisconsin. My dad's British, and so I'm a first generation New Zealander with 3 passports, and the privilege of whiteness and being able to move pretty freely between all those countries under the covert of normalcy, I guess, or norm culture. And it's been interesting to come back after living in the States for 8 years, because there's so much of Californian culture. And as I say Californian culture, what I realize is like weird, queer San Francisco culture that I really miss. And I find myself like trying to find the cracks in New Zealand culture, because I feel like there's certain things that make me feel like, oh yeah, this feels really, really like I'm home. And then there's so many aspects of it that I just feel like a complete foreigner in. And and I think to like kind of echo what Albert was saying, I think, yeah, for me, the home is the weirdos and the queers, and like trying to and I don't really feel like the sense of like until I'm in community or communing with other like-minded creatives and weirdos. That's where the feeling of home comes from. But I'm curious, and part of what I'm trying to do right now, because I feel everything so clearly being back in New Zealand, I'm like, whoa, I'm not an American, but I'm not a New Zealander. Like, I'm spread-eagled. I'm realizing that, like, I really like the liminal spaces. Like, I love the ocean. When I'm on the ocean, I feel like I'm maybe home, which is like not an easy place to live, but it's possible. So yeah, I'm interested in the spaces in between, which I feel like is somewhere that you inhabit with your comics really, really beautifully, Christina, is all these you kind of find the spaces and then dig into them and see what's there.
Thank you. I also was going to say you did live on the ocean for a while.
I did.
Those are I guess what strikes me about listening to those last comments and reflections is that, what it really is amongst community and amongst people that we really find our home and belonging and community. And I'm on grid view right now, so I like see all your beautiful faces and all your names, and this is this is what feels really rooted and amazing. So thank you so much for joining us and being here and sharing this space and sharing this air. I'm confused. Should we yell art out? Okay. Oh, you can go. Okay. It's out there on the windowsill. I really love watching the two-screen. It's on the windowsill. Okay. Now we're just going to gong us out so you can take a deep breath. I'm in his brain.
Thank you.